You are listening to AP Taylor Swift, the podcast for Swifties who are all about the lyrics. We're your hosts. I'm Jen.
I'm Monty.
And I'm Jody.
And we are your unofficial professors of Taylor Swift. Hello, and welcome to another episode of AP Taylor Swift. This week is a continuation of our conversation last week where we discussed winter songs, so go check that out if you haven't already. We will probably repeat a little bit, but be building on that conversation. So we were chatting about songs that we thought were either set in winter, related to winter, whatever it may be. And this week we're going to be deep diving one of the songs we discussed, and we're going to be deep diving Forever Winter, which is sad. Content warning now, everybody. I don't know how to transition away from that. So, but it's a genuine warning. So Jody's just nodding and making faces at me as I say that. So Forever Winter, just to get the admin out of the way, came out on Red, Taylor's version in 2021 as a vault track. So most people would theorize it was probably written around the Red era, but it came out in 2021 as the vault track, and it was written by Mark Foster and Taylor Swift. So we'll deep dive the song, and to do that, we'll think about who's the speaker, who's the you, and what are they talking, like what's the purpose of this, and then we'll come around at the end to discuss the purpose. But I feel like we should go more into cultural context than we normally do for this song. Agree, disagree?
I mean, if by cultural you mean Taylor Swift?
Well, yes.
Cultural we do, but Taylor Swift
yeah.
typically don't. But yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah, so most people theorize that this song is about a friend of Taylor's, Jeff Lang, who, again, content warning, did end his own life after a long struggle with mental health. And we very adamantly try not to do rumors. This doesn't feel as much of a rumor as contextualizing, which I think is why I said cultural context, just the concept of really contextualizing this song. Because if you don't know that and you're thinking this song is just like a normal relationship, it would come across very differently than knowing that it's about someone who's really struggling through those mental health problems and what that means and the impact of that. So any other context we want to add before we get into the lines themselves?
I think I said this on our last week's episode, but even though it's pretty well known that this is the context, it is worth noting that I don't think Taylor has ever come out and confirmed it. So to that extent, I feel like we can kind of still say it's a rumor. I think people have generally tried to tie things together, but sometimes artists extrapolate based on real experiences, and then the details are blurred or fabricated or not totally accurate. So I think we can start there in knowing the context, but who really knows what's in her mind, and who knows what the reality is, right?
She's never sung it live.
That's what I was going to say. I think the clue that we have that this is not just a romantic relationship gone wrong is that she hasn't sung this live, and the only songs that she hasn't sung live tend to be very deeply dark and emotional and sad.
And personal and in a different way.
Yeah, and exactly. So I think, you know, the details of this specific friend might be conjecture, but I think the context, we can put together the context clues of this is more about a mental health struggle than it is about
just a relationship.
Yeah.
A relationship or just like someone who's been difficult. I mean, and we'll go through the lyrics, and I think that's where you start to see you can read it both ways, but it changes dramatically when you look at it from the perspective of a mental health issues and mental health struggles.
Yeah. Like we always say, she writes things that are personal and universal, and this doesn't have to be about her friend's personal life. Like we don't need to, people sometimes get so parasocial that they're like invading privacy. And I think this is not invading the privacy of this friend, but saying from the perspective of he in the song likely is struggling with mental health, that can radically change how we view the song and how we relate to the song and how we empathize with the song. So and that matters.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Do we want to talk about the title at all? I think we did talk about it last week, but it starts out telling you this isn't bright and sunny and warm and a good feeling. Yeah. Maybe that's all we need to say for now.
That's all you really know at this point.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to read the whole first stanza, so it's several lines, but just to give us all context. So, he says he doesn't believe anything much he hears these days. He says, "Why fall in love just so you can watch it go away?" He spends most of his nights wishing it was how it used to be. He spends most of his flights getting pulled down by gravity. I call just checking up on him. He's up 3 a.m. pacing. He says, "It's not just a phase I'm in. My voice comes out begging."
Yeah,
He's got a lot going on.
Yeah, right off the bat, it's not obvious at all what this song is going to be about. We've got two characters, much like many Taylor Swift songs start. He says, she says,
Right.
or he says, I say, I guess.
Yeah, an I and a he.
It's a lot about him and what he is saying and doing. And that's insinuating how he's feeling, right? So he's never saying how he's feeling. But he says, like, I don't believe anything. He doesn't believe anything much he hears these days. So he's not, what's the mental state that infers?
Well, and with the I and the he, we just know this is a first person story. Pretty common for Taylor. She likes doing that. But it's also obviously not omniscient. So, like a third person omniscient narrator would know what's going on in his head. And I think this is setting the stage. We've talked about this too before. Sometimes the concept of show, don't tell. Right. So I don't think she ever says in the song, and I could be proven wrong, but I don't think she ever says in the song, like, he has mental health struggles, but she's showing, I think the lack of certainty perhaps on our end is important of saying, okay, we have two lines that says things he says. So he says he doesn't believe in things, and he says falling in love just goes away. And then he spends his nights wishing it was how it used to be, and he spends most of his flights getting pulled down by gravity. So we see what he's doing with his time and what he's saying, and then we can start to extrapolate. Like, if I saw someone I loved, romantic, not romantic, just someone I loved with this experience, what would that be like? And then we get into the eye of, like, how is she responding to that?
Yeah, I think there's a level of opaqueness that's been created with the first few lines because we don't get any of her side of the story. It's just he says this, he does this, and we have no reaction as to whether that's good, bad, how should we feel about it, what do we really think about it. That's irrelevant. It's really just about saying the facts, and this is what he says, and we know nothing more than this.
I think in the end of this verse is where we start to see, like, how should we be feeling about this, because he's like, I call just checking up on him. So meaning that all of these things he's saying and doing require a check-in.
Checking up.
And then he's up 3 a.m. pacing. That's never a good idea when you're up at 3 a.m. pacing.
Well, that also implies that she called him at 3 a.m.
Right, which means you're really worried.
Yeah.
He says it's not just a phase I'm in. That means that this is long term. This is not something that's going to go away, potentially hinting at the title. My voice comes out begging.
Can we actually go back a few lines too? When he said, I guess, like, there is a point, just walking back what I was saying, when she says he spends most of his flights getting pulled down by gravity, that's really interesting. Maybe it's because I just saw Wicked, but it's the opposite of defying gravity is getting pulled down by gravity, and that to me is maybe the first time where we do see a little bit of projection or implication rather than just something he says, because an outsider would not be able to see that that's what's happening. It's an inference.
And what a beautiful metaphor for depression that, as I'm saying this, I did not take my antidepressants today, so I will mute myself in a moment and take my antidepressants. But the idea of being pulled down by gravity is this actual force of nature that you can fight it to a certain extent. Like, Wicked and magic aside, with our human limitations, we can flights getting pulled down by gravity. Airplanes are an insane way to fight gravity, but gravity is gonna win. Like, you have to have, like, there's a lot that goes into resisting that gravity, but eventually you're gonna have to get pulled down, and that is, in my experience, very accurate when I'm having, some more of my intense times of depression, of feeling like I use the metaphor a lot of, like, I'm clawing my way out. That's the one that has felt more true to me. But either way, it's like the moment you stop that intense effort, you're going to fall back down, and you cannot carry on that effort forever. Like it is in some ways, it's the pushing the rock.
Yeah,
Sisyphus. Yeah, it's like it's a Sisyphean task at times to fight your depression. Medicine can help, and I wouldn't go do that right now. But yes.
I feel like this happened last week too, Jen.
Probably.
It's a good giving you some reminders.
We record a lot on the weekends, listeners, and I'm very good about my meds when my morning routine is consistent, and weekends are a struggle. And apparently we just have to record every weekend and talk about depression at some point.
And then we'll all be taking our medication regularly.
Or I put a reminder on my phone. That's probably the better option. But
one
either
of the two.
Way.
So we've made our way to the fact that she's checking up on him at odd hours, 3 a.m.
He's not doing well, and it's not a phase.
Not doing well. It's not a phase, and there's a little bit of desperation. My voice comes out begging.
And then we go into, this is how she's begging. All this time I didn't know you were breaking down. I'd fall to pieces on the floor if you weren't around. Too young to know it gets better. I'll be summer sun for you forever. Forever winter if you go.
What's interesting to me is the combination of, I called just checking up on him. He's up 3 a.m. pacing. So she was concerned enough to check in at 3 a.m. And yet, even with that knowledge, she says, all this time, I didn't know you were breaking down.
Yeah.
That, like, she knew something was wrong, but it to me, this is implying, like, I didn't understand the magnitude of your struggle.
Right, or maybe that's why he says it's not just a phase I'm in. Maybe it was thought that this is a phase, and it's like, no, this is not a phase. This is consistently how I feel.
I'm interested in the tenses a little bit because the first part that we read was all in present tense. It feels like it's happening now. And yet the second part is in a present part. Is it present participle? It's like ongoing, where it's you were breaking down all this time. It's not past tense. It's still happening, but now you have a much longer window that it's talking about. And so I do wonder if there has been a time jump, if the first part happens in a different time and then we like fast forward and we're like, turns out this has been happening the whole time. Like this thing never stopped. It continued. And I didn't realize maybe that it continued for so long after that one night 3 a.m. call. I'm curious if there's been a jump.
And the way she refers, so in the first stanza that I read, it's he. And then we move into the chorus, I believe this is, and it's you. So we go from, perhaps these are little vignettes in the stanzas of, here's an experience or a time, and then we go to the chorus where I'm speaking to you. But the he and the you does switch, which is interesting.
Yeah,
it's apparently
and I feel
past
like
continuous tense. I just looked it up. So it's like it's just
obviously
it's the fact that it still sounds like present tense, but it is actually referring to something that started at the past at some point and has continued over time.
Was that cat
my
going
cat
down
is,
the stairs?
My cat is having the spring Olympics right now.
Balance out the darkness of this song content with the levity that is your cat doing whatever Merlin is doing. What I was going to say before Merlin had tried, a triple axel or whatever he was doing over there. I think to your point, Monty, it does feel like we're looking at different time periods between the verses and the choruses. And I liked how you put that, Jen, that the verses are showing what this person is going through and the choruses are the speaker and the narrator showing their desperation, their reaction to it, basically.
I also think that the reason I really pointed out specifically at the top of the episode that this was on Red Taylor's version, but it was a vault track that was likely written around that time. So Red, the original version that Taylor now owns, woot woot, came out in 2012. So likely this song was written around 2010, 2011, 2009, which would have been like freshman, sophomore-ish year for her. And not to say that our current reactions or support systems or language around mental health are perfect, but they are better than what they were in 2010.
That's for sure.
And she would have been a teenager, and our understanding as adults is different. So there's I just say that because of the line he says, it's not just a phase I'm in. To me, everything about that first stanza and then the following reaction is kind of like, he says, why fall in love? He's saying he doesn't believe in anything. And like her trying to support him may have been like why don't you just like try to cheer up? Or like, why do you believe these things? Which are like not the most helpful things to say, but like they're coming from a place of love. Like the first stanza to me is portraying someone who's really struggling and a friend who cares deeply but doesn't know how to help. Nor, I would also just argue, should she have had to know how to help, because asking a like 14-year-old girl to help her friend who's struggling is not setting anyone up for success. And then in the chorus, she's like, I did not know you were breaking down this much. And it's like, I'm falling to pieces and I'm too, if you weren't around, too young to know it gets better. I sometimes wonder if that's both of them in this, that they were both too young to know that things could improve.
But it's so interesting. The reason that I was interested in the tenses is because it gets more ambiguous with the I'd fall to pieces. It turns into a conditional kind of statement, right? Of like, I would do this if you weren't around. But it's like, I didn't know this was happening. I didn't know it was happening all the time. I would have done this if I had known this. Too young to know this. I'll be summer for you, forever winter if you go. I'm just confused as to what time we're in and where this dialogue is coming in. Is it something she's saying directly to the speaker, or is the speaker saying this directly to the other person? Is it after the fact? It is a little ambiguous by design, which makes it feel like either it's over a long period of time, there's been some sort of a time jump, or maybe it's happening right now, but after a long time. Like there's something here that is adding to the complexity of the relationship and the scenario, and just the way it's written. It feels complicated.
Do we want to try the next stanza to see if that helps clarify? Because I know we do repeat the chorus.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll read the stanza. He seems fine most of the time, forcing smiles and never minds. His laugh is a symphony. When the lights go out, it's hard to breathe. I pull at every thread, trying to solve the puzzles in his head. Live my life scared to death, he'll decide to leave instead. I called, just checking up on him. He's up, 5 a.m. wasted, long gone, not even listening. My voice comes out screaming.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's not worse. Definitely
escalates. But I also think we start to get a sense of why the chorus says, all this time I didn't know you were breaking down, because she said, because he seems fine most of the time. But what that really is forcing smiles. And I'm assuming this also means forcing never minds. Like just instead of saying, when someone says, how are you doing? Or like, what's happening? She's like, oh, never mind.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Like forcing out never mind.
Yeah.
Like
that's how I assumed the forcing was also modifying the never mind.
Yeah. I think the word seems and forcing, this is obvious, but still, he seems fine most of the time. He's forcing smiles and never minds. That being fine or smiling and not minding are generally good things. But then when you put it next to seems and forcing, then it's like, oh, okay, like there's a facade here.
Exactly that he's hiding something. And I think now she sees that it's hiding and it's not actually a real smile. Or
could also be if like a level of flatness in your reaction. I think I always interpreted the never minds as like he doesn't really care about anything. Like it feels a little uncaring, forcing smiles. But like I like that it's kind of a play that way, right? Like it could be forcing smiles and never minds. It could also be he's forcing smiles and never really objects.
Minds what's
he just
going
goes
on.
Along with anything.
Yeah.
Like he's not strongly opinionated. He doesn't fight back. He just kind of goes along with it.
But then we have his laugh as a symphony. So like when the lights go out, it's hard to breathe. So what I don't understand, or what I would love to better understand, is do we think there is laughter during this time? Or because otherwise it would have said his laugh was a symphony.
It's present tense. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I think it is. I mean, if he seems fine, then you would assume that this person is putting on that facade, and like it seems effortless. It feels effortless, and there's no red flags. And oftentimes that happens, right? Like I remember I remember when Robin Williams' death suddenly came out of nowhere, everybody was like, he was always laughing, he was always smiling, it's always the happiest people who are hurting inside. Like, people say things like this, and to me, it just highlights how little we know about like what's really going on. You always only see the tip of the iceberg. You can't really always know the storms that are raging inside.
I also read a lot of her, like, this is all through the lens of the I, again, not omniscient, definitely that limited first person. And it also sometimes, just hearing from my husband's perspective of, I had a rough few years, guys, so I'm okay now, but let's just say I'm relating to the other side of the song quite a bit. And I know that there were times when I could like pull myself out and would have a good moment. And the idea of his laugh is a symphony of like the celebration of, oh my, is it okay? Are we getting better? And then when the lights go out, it's hard to breathe. That the quick pivot of, nope,
I think that
okay.
makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So I'm seeing that through that perspective, or through her lens of someone who loves him so much. And is like, oh, it's loud, it's beautiful, it's glorious, and lights are off again.
And that goes back to he seems fine most of the time. So his laugh is a symphony, but then the lights go out and it's hard to breathe. So it's that means some of the time he doesn't seem fine at all.
Yeah.
Which is why I pull at every thread to solve the puzzles in his head. Going back to what you said, Jen, of like trying to help somebody with what they're going through, when nearly impossible to do, especially when you're young.
Yeah, especially as a teenager in a time that was not having good open conversations about this type of stuff. Like,
and this is where, very different from the first stanza where she was just checking up on him. Now, like, she is in the middle of this with him and really seeing and experiencing with it. Live my life scared to death, he'll decide to leave instead. So like, she knows that there's a risk here.
Yes.
I have to give it to young Taylor here. The live my life scared to death, that
parallel,
beautiful parallel structure of the words is so lovely. We get a lot of this from older Taylor, but just love it when we hear a young Taylor also use this clever wordplay.
It's the choice of words of he'll decide to leave instead is interesting, because there's the obvious implication there of taking one's own life. But I also think the idea of sort of like mentally leaving, like there were definitely like periods of my life of being like fully checked out.
Yeah.
And I think that being scared to death is like to leave instead. I think there are several implications there. One very obvious, probably number one priority. But again, that to me, I'm just seeing so much naivety in this song, not in a bad way, but someone being like, youth, like being confronted with this and being like, I'm scared to death, like that he's gonna leave. Whatever that means, there's some bad versions, but it's just it's the fear of losing that person. And you can lose people in multiple ways. And the idea of the lights going out in his head of who he is getting shut down. And like, that's also losing him in some ways. Like, there's so much complexity in this. And this, so to me, screams someone trying to put words to something that takes years and years and years of therapy to even get close to it sometimes. So like, this is so well done, but also immediately puts you into the perspective of who she is and who she was and who we all are at times if our friends are going through stuff.
Yeah, I liked, you said naivete. I was thinking of like like an innocence as well. Like it's the same kind of feeling, but it's like very, you don't know the true extent to maybe how bad it can be. And so you're almost using these like euphemisms in some ways. We talked about at the beginning of the song where if you know kind of some of the context and conversation around this song, then you know how dark it could be. Maybe if you came in without any of that context and we're just looking at it, it could feel like maybe it's a person in a relationship and they're leaving, like you're worried about that person leaving. The idea of using the term leave for something as dark as mentally checked out, death. I mean, it could be as simple as somebody isolating themselves, cutting themselves off from all their loved ones, which are all serious and dark things. And she is clearly scared to death of this outcome. So it is serious, but just the way that it says, decide to leave instead. Later on, we talk about long gone, not even listening. It's this idea of the fact that you're going somewhere, or that a person can go somewhere else away from here. That's really what leaving means.
And we have the long gone, and then it really escalates. The voice comes out screaming.
Yeah.
So we're no longer begging, now we're screaming.
It's such a euphemistic way to say what this person is really going through.
And I think from the I point of view, also the line, I pull at every thread trying to solve the puzzles in his head, of the desperation, which we get a little bit of, which is why I think it may be sort of moments over time. Like if we put it in high school years, maybe the first stanza is freshman year and the second stanza is sophomore, like maybe like a year has passed and the struggles are ongoing. But in the first one, it's all about him, and she's checking up on him and begging. Okay, that matters, don't get me wrong, but it escalates so much into it's hard to breathe. I pull at every thread trying to solve the puzzle, scared to death. My voice comes out screaming. Like, it has escalated so much at this point that I think time has to have passed.
I agree with that, and I think time has passed between the first verse, and we have the first verse happens over a period of time, because he spends most of his nights and most of his flights, right? So we know that that's not, one day. This is over a period of time. Then at some point after a period of time, she calls to check up and begging. Then she sees it. Now that sees that this is not a phase, and he has told her this is not a phase, more time goes on. He seems fine most of the time, but she knows something's not right. She's trying to solve the puzzles. Now she's checking up at 5 a.m. He's wasted, long gone. And now she's like, shit. Like, this is not getting better. This is getting worse. And then her voice comes out screaming.
He's escalated from pacing to being wasted.
Yeah.
That, to me, the first stanza could have been just like a mildly toxic relationship with a moody boy. And then you get here, though, and it's clearly so different. Like, we have gotten into substance abuse to cope with this. Like, it is truly...
Yeah. Serious.
Yes. It has deepened greatly.
That putting the 5 a.m. wasted next to the long gone is so interesting, because there's nothing here clarifying that it's substance abuse, like, over a long period of time, but we're just kind of reading between the lines here, and we're maybe extrapolating a little. But like, this idea of like, when do you lose a person mentally, especially when it comes to addiction? Like, sometimes people feel like with long terminal chronic mental illnesses, or any kind of physical illness that is chronic and lasts a long time, but also with addiction, which is now recognized as a kind of illness, it feels like you can often say that, like, here's like when life actually ends, but like, here's when we feel like we lost the person.
Right.
Like, maybe that person has been gone for a while. They haven't been themselves for a really long time.
Yeah. Or they've succumbed to their illness or whatever struggles that they've had.
Yeah.
So I think it just makes the next chorus, it's the same words, but with so much more urgency, especially because the line before it was, my voice comes out screaming.
I think I read almost more like survivor's guilt type in the second time we hear the chorus, because things have escalated. And then to again hear, all this time I didn't know you were breaking down, that there's this time around is like, I didn't realize. And like, I might be projecting a little bit into it, but it does feel like it's a weightier chorus of, I didn't know, and I'd fall to pieces if you weren't around. And that line too hits harder. I'd fall to pieces on the floor if you weren't around. Coming 2 lines after, he is up 5 a.m. wasted, long gone, not even listening. So like,
it does feel more, it feels more definitively in the past tense this time to me. Like, in the first one, it felt like it was a conditional, like, I would do this if you weren't here. It was all very hypothetical. Whereas this time, because of that voice comes out screaming, the long gone, it feels a lot more like I used to fall to pieces when you like it says if
Yeah.
you weren't around, but it feels like when you weren't around, I would fall to pieces. I didn't know what to do. Like I didn't know how to cope. I didn't know what you were going through. And it does feel a little bit like guilt, admission of guilt.
Yeah. Which it's, to be clear, it's not her fault. And I think like she would know that now, but being in it, it's like
That's how you feel.
it's guilt, and this is the word I was also looking for, helplessness. There's so much helplessness from the I point of view in this song.
I agree with that assessment.
Well, we get to a very short bridge that just exacerbates the helplessness.
The only other thing I want to say in the chorus before we go into this bridge, because I do think it matters, we just didn't talk about it the last time, is the phrase, I'll be summer sun for you forever, forever winter if you don't go. So that's how the chorus ends. And that is talking about like the stages of grief. I think there's like some bargaining in there a bit of like, and again, that's some of the guilt of like, I'll be your summer sun, I can do it. And it's like, no, you can't.
You can't.
No one human can be summer sun forever for a person. Like that's not how it works. But the desperation, the helplessness, the bargaining of I'll do that, and then forever winter if you go, that I'll never see the sun again. It'll be cold, it'll be bleak, it'll be lifeless if you go. The obvious juxtaposition of those two things together and the bargaining that goes in there, I just think informs the bridge. So I just wanted to say that.
Very much so. So the bridge is, if I was standing there in your apartment, I'd take that bomb in your head and disarm it. I'd say I love you even at your darkest, and please don't go.
And when she's singing it in the song, the please don't go slows down. It's like, and please don't.
And it's and that's all on one line. Like, please don't go is on its own line, because it's, I'd say I'd love you even at your darkest, and new line, please don't go.
The bomb analogy is so interesting because it feels like something that's been there for a long time. It's ticking. Yeah. Like we have the sense of inevitability when it comes to bombs. It's like we don't know how it's there. We don't know when it's going to go off. It's just like an ultimatum that's just waiting to go off. And it's also like you don't want to do anything to trigger it because it can be so explosive. You don't know what might set it off. But then she says, I would take it and disarm it. Like, I would have done this.
Yeah.
It's interesting that bombs can be disarmed, as scary as they are. And so it's just like a very interesting analogy to me.
I also go back to the helplessness that you were talking about, Jen. If I was standing there in your apartment, so she's not there. And we know she's not there because she's been calling this whole time, so she hasn't physically been present. But this really brings it home that she is not physically present with this person. And I wonder how much of that contributes to this sense of guilt and helplessness, because the reality is she's not there.
Yeah, and the bomb too, the idea of a bomb in your head, like you can't see it, which means you don't know what the countdown is at. So there's this anticipation and like fear, and like it's not an inactive bomb. The idea of I'll take the bomb in your head and disarm it. So it's been armed. We know that something has to be armed to be disarmed. And she's so good at this. We talk about this, I think, in Thank You, Amy. She talks about like you beat me black and blue. She does a lot of using very violent physical metaphors for emotional pain. And a lot of the times in later discography songs, it's about like her own pain. But seeing it here is like looking at someone you love. There is, as far as we know, the body is blemish free. There is no clear sign of issue, but like the bomb is in their head and it's armed and you're just waiting for it to go off. And the lack of visibility into it, creating that metaphor, like helps in some ways like process the something is wrong here and I need to put a visual to this because I don't see it, but I know it and I need a visual in my head. And that's super normal. That's a really normal way to react to those things. And a bomb is just such a violent, like, the bomb would destroy a lot of other things too. It wouldn't just destroy the person. Like I just think there's like a lot of layers to that metaphor too, like you were saying, Monzi. It's a very interesting choice. And then I think the second half of the bridge, I don't know, like I almost teared up as you were reading it, Jody, of that I'd say I love you even at your darkest. Which is, out of everything in this that feels a little bit innocent or kind of like, what can you really do? That line, I think, is one of the most beautiful lines of, like, if I was with you, I would tell you I love you at your darkest. Like, it's so simple, but here it is. This is what I really have to offer.
Right. This is what I can give you.
I think
And
it's
that's all I
back.
can really give you.
It is back to that kind of like conditional though, right? Like what I'm like, this person feels a real sense of guilt and responsibility because it's all of like, I would have done this if I were there. I'd do this. I'd do this. And that's a lot of responsibility to take on one's shoulders, especially because we feel like we all know from the outside, it's like none of those things are probably like it's like the summer and winter thing. It's like no one can be a forever summer for somebody. No one can just like wave a magic wand and fix everything.
And I think it's interesting also that the bridge is all about what the I would do, right? In this song,
Yeah.
which is about this other person's suffering, the bridge, which we know is an instrumental, monumental like point in a song where things tend to change, is all
Yeah.
about her perspective and what she would do if she was there, but she's not there, either because she wasn't there physically for this person, even though she was there emotionally, or because she's actually talking in the past tense and it's already this forever winter. We don't know, but
Yeah.
I think that's very interesting that the bridge is all about what she would do.
Yeah, this is where I think, I mean, oftentimes in Taylor's music, the bridge is where we start to get a glimpse into the real true purpose of the song. And I think despite this song starting off all being about him and being about somebody else, we start to get a glimpse here that this song might really just be a way of coping for her and a way of working through her own helplessness and emotions and guilt.
And sense of responsibility. I loved that word
Yeah.
that you used, because I think that's even if it isn't her responsibility, you still feel a sense of responsibility. And I feel like that's what I get most from this bridge.
Again, I've just said this so many times, I know, but like, if right now today, as a 34-year-old, yes, I'm 34, as a 34-year-old, if a friend I love dearly was going through these struggles, I would, and I love them, and I'm like, how do I help you? I had a friend a few years back go through a rough miscarriage, and I remember calling and talking to the friend and being like, how do I support them? And like, I struggled a little bit with it. Not that it was like, oh, me struggling with her problems were worse, but like, you don't know what to do.
You don't know
sometimes.
what to do. You don't know how to show up for somebody because these are impossible situations.
And then imagine being 14 and having this happen. Like, okay, like this, it's just the if I could, the what ifs and all the things that I want to try to do and the impossibilities of it and the lack of life experience and maturity to process it. Like, the point I'm making is like, if I struggled in my 30s, dear God, imagine being a teenager. Like, that's just
everything is so much more
equipped.
heightened.
Yes.
Everything is so much more dramatic, and it feels like the end of the world. It's hard in that moment to imagine a life beyond the challenges that you face in those moments. And so everything feels very like ultimatum is the word that I keep thinking of. It feels very extreme.
Yeah, and to be in a situation where everything is so heightened, and then to have a friend that something for them, it could be the end of their world.
It did, yeah.
And it was. If it's about this friend, which it likely is, like when a guy not having a crush back on you feels like the end of the world, for something to actually be that serious, like how do you process that? Like, I don't know.
I don't know either.
As we're going through this, we're not at the purpose, but like my empathy for the I in this song is growing every way we go, of like, you're just trying. You love this friend so much and you're trying to figure out how to help, and you just don't have a single tool at your disposal other than perhaps writing a song and working through what you would do if you could do, and how you want to help and how you wish it would help.
So then the chorus repeats. The only difference here is instead of saying all this time I didn't know, it just starts out with I didn't know. I didn't know, which coming after that bridge is like it. I wanted to say it hits different. It does. We got to use a Taylor song. Levity, yay, moments of lightness. And then from there, the last kind of verse intersperses lines from the choruses and the verses previous. So I'll be summer sun forever at 3 a.m. pacing. All this time I didn't know at 5 a.m. wasted. I'd be in pieces on the floor forever winter if you go. You do the last two lines?
Yeah, the last two lines is interesting because we were talking about the time
So
jumps.
I will say the last two lines then, and this is very old Taylor. He says he doesn't believe anything much he hears these days. I say, believe in one thing, I won't go away. And so I say this is old Taylor
Yeah,
because it's that country music bringing back the
back to where we
beginning,
started.
back to where we started. But the difference here is she ends with what she says. And she ends in, to your point, Monty, in present tense.
Yeah. And this is where I think that the very first stanza and the last stanza are things that happened a long time ago. And then I think everything that happens in the middle is like stuff that happens after a time jump. And the reason that I think that is because the thing that he said he doesn't believe anything much he hears these days. And she says, believe in this, I won't go away. And then the rest of the song, what do we realize is that she's not there. She's not actually there. She's calling in, she's checking in. And then even her own regrets is like, if I had been there, I would have done blah, blah, blah. So I get the sense that a lot of her guilt comes from her walking back on a promise or something that she said to believe was that I'm not going to go away. And I feel like there's some working through that is happening because she wasn't there. And she just says that if I was there, I could have done this, I could have done that. And so that's, I feel like the sense that I'm getting is this time jump, but also it could also be like such a poetic way of just ending it and just saying like, no matter what happens, like I won't go away. I'm not going to forget. I will still be here. Like I'm still here even now, despite everything that happened. So I think it can be a little bit of both. Just knowing the way that the middle of the song plays out of like, I didn't know how bad it was, all of this regret. To me, it feels very like, it feels like things were said a long time ago and then they didn't, like life didn't happen that way. And then things went sideways.
Poetry of the end of this song being giving him something to believe in, and it's believe in me and that I'll be here with you. Whether or not that's something said posthumously, she is writing a song about like kind of immortalizing this person.
Yeah, I was just going to say that is immortalizing him, right?
Right. Or whether that's something she wished she said or whether it's something she did. I don't know. I don't know that part matters as much. I think I like the idea of poetically bringing it back and giving this person the song where like is so full of desperation and sadness, ending it with believe in this, believe in me.
I think like as I'm working through it, I think it can actually be both, and it maybe is both. Like I think that there's a lot of maybe regret because it was something that was said that didn't seem to have carried out for a while, and so she's like unpacking what it meant to not be there. But it's almost like renewing that promise and saying, I haven't forgotten this promise and the promise does still stand. I am still here. And so like going forward. So I'm like, it almost like can be both in some ways. And I also really do like that poetry of just like believe in one thing.
Going back a little bit, the only other change I wanted to point out is in the second to last section where she's combining the choruses and the stanzas. The last two lines are, I'd be in pieces on the floor forever winter if you go. And it is a change. In the prior choruses, she'd say, I'd fall to pieces on the floor, versus here she said, I'd be in pieces on the floor. So it's a small change, but I just think as we're going through the timeline, I think there's this idea of like, I'm going to fall to pieces. I'm going to fall to pieces. It's forever winter if you'd go. I said I would fall to pieces on the floor if you went. Well, you did. So I'm in pieces on the floor. Like the lack of the fall is like, I think progression has happened there, which I think just adds to everything else we're saying. But that was the only change I wanted to point out too.
Also, now that you've said fall that many times, I realize the only season she doesn't have in here is spring, because she says, I'd fall to pieces. I'd be summer sun for you forever, winter if you go. But she doesn't have spring.
But yeah, it's all like brightness, dying, dead. Like that's,
yeah.
we don't We don't get the cycle of renewal.
Yeah, that's where
No.
the spring is gone.
Yeah,
Spring
Persephone does not come back up.
doesn't come back.
Yeah.
Well, we're circling purpose.
Yeah, I can go into my purpose, which, I mean, for me, this song is processing grief. And in particular, the word responsibility I really liked, and kind of honed in on processing her own feelings of responsibility here, because I think, yes, it's about the person and what they were going through, but really it's about how the speaker is processing and feeling, especially when we get to the bridge and all the things that she wishes she would do or said she would have done. I think that really speaks to the sense of, if I was there, could I have changed this? If I had noticed, could I have changed this? And I think that's part of grieving and grief, particularly no matter how old you are, but particularly when you're young and something totally unexplained or inexplicable like this happens, you kind of, at least in my logical brain, I always go to like, what could I have done or what could I do, right? I'm the type of anxiety that likes to control things so that I don't have to worry. And I see that a lot here. This is someone trying to use logic where there is not logic. This is an emotional, this is pure emotions. This is dealing with someone's, mental health, and there's not logic behind a mental health struggle. Those are in conflict with one another, as I know all too well, not to bring in another Red song, but sorry. I speak fluent Swift. But yeah, processing grief, processing responsibility. And I also just really like the idea of using this song to immortalize. I don't know. I actually don't know that the song is meant to immortalize the person, because it is so dark, and this is not how you'd want to immortalize this person. I actually think if Ruin the Friendship is about the same person, I feel like Ruin the Friendship is the song that really immortalizes the person. This song is much more about processing.
There's something to that too, right? If this song, even if it was released in the Bolt track, if it was written like over a decade ago, and then you now have another version that came out now at such a different phase of life, and this is a song coming out decades later in a totally different phase of life on an album where she was writing about her fiance and her love of her life, and it's like this extremely romantic, but even on that album, she hasn't left this person. This person is still there with her. Like, she really, truly is carrying this person forward and immortalizing him. And just, like, it's almost like keeping that promise, is that she's not going away. Like, it's very much still there. There's some real like beauty in that, no matter how many years pass, no matter how many eras we've gone through, that experience will still stick with you. And I can maybe go into my purpose since I'm already talking. I actually, so my high school, we used to joke, was cursed, because there was a death every year for like the whole 4 years that I was there. There were multiple students that we lost, from actually the year before I started high school to the year after I graduated. And then our principal actually passed away. It was like a whole thing. And it was in the year that I was in 10th grade, it was actually the year that Chris and I started dating. Around that time, one of my friends, we lost one of my friends to suicide. And it was not like a super close friend. It was somebody that I had shared classes with. I had known for years, obviously, as a part of the school system, somebody who was always laughing and always like very much the life of the party. There were a lot of friends that I had who had grown up with him, who had gone to church with him, who like knew him way, way better than I did. But it was this like incredible sense of shock. And the song very much reminds me of that moment, of that heightened feeling of being in high school where everything just feels so extreme and nothing makes sense anyways. And then you have this tragedy and you don't know how to deal with it. And no matter how close or far you are, you question every single thing that you did. And you're like, what if I had just been there? And what if I had just done this thing? And what if I had said this thing differently? Or like, what if I had recognized this? And I think as humans, we have a real tendency to insert ourselves in the narrative and try to take back control on anything that we can take control on in these situations when something happens that's out of our control. Whenever there's these like real senseless tragedies, you are grasping quite literally at straws. And it's not something that ever leaves you. It's going to be 20 years next in 2027. And like every year, that time of year, like I think about it, other friends think about it, we all think about it. It's never something that you really forget. And so I think the song is definitely like a grappling with that grief. It's trying to process your own role in this tragedy and trying to figure out like what you could have done differently, and dealing with that guilt, even if it doesn't make any sense to have that guilt. And I just think it's a beautiful, simple song written like so appropriate for the age that she wrote it in, that it captures a lot of emotions in very few repetitive words. It's not one of her most verbose, poetic, profound pieces, and yet it still conveys so much emotion so simply. And in my opinion, like one of the reasons why Red and these early albums were so powerful in kind of cementing her role, because she was able to communicate a lot with very few words. And so, yeah, I think this song is very much like a self-guilt reflection song.
Yeah, I saying that like I totally agree that it's like not her most poetic song, but as you were saying that, I was like, what do I think it is? And I was like, it might be one of her most raw songs, where it just feels like she's just pulling her heart out and putting it on a platter in some ways, and being like, I don't know how to make this more beautiful. This is what it was. And there's like a lot of power in that. I think for me, without trauma dumping on our listeners, I have built empathy for my husband and my loved ones, I think, in listening to this song. I've certainly supported people through bad phases, but I more often than not have been the person on the other side of this situation, and truly I'm doing better. And I have no shame about it. So my lack of talking about it is not that I'm unwilling to. Maybe I'll do a Substack someday where I trauma dump more, but that's not what we're here to do. But this song, and I'm definitely projecting because this was actually not that long ago. I had a conversation with my husband because I'm doing better, and he kind of said a few things, and I was like processing them. Like they weren't mean, but it was very much like he was assuming I wasn't gonna like cook dinner or something like that. And I was like, I can cook dinner, and he was like, no, like if you're stressed. And I was like, oh, and I was like, okay, you need to start trusting that I'm doing better. I can cook dinner. And he was like, okay, are you sure? And I'm like, I've been on antidepressants for a while. Like, I'm really doing better. And like, I need you to start sort of trusting that. And I was mildly irritated and then processed it and was like, that's not on him. Like, he was coming from a point of like trying to like take care of me, which is very sweet. He's been very, very caring during that. But reading this song from the other person's point of view of like, what do I do? How can I help? Like, all of that, I think helped me even just in this conversation build more empathy of like, it's not that it's not worth it, but it's also hard to be there for someone when you really can't help them and you desperately want to. And like, I do know that feeling of, oh, I'm smart, I'm competent, I'm capable, and you're struggling with something, like, let's fix it, let's get into it. And like, that doesn't actually always solve things, which is one of the most annoying parts of growing up. You can't get an A on fixing other people's problems. Like, that's not how it works, even though you desperately want it to. And this song, just grappling with it, is like, oh, I'm seeing it more, I'm understanding it more, and like, I get it. And I'm not, I'm sorry that in my life that we all had to go through it. It's not like I tried to make anything worse for anyone, and they never tried to make things worse for me. But like, it just puts you in a hard position to be in that spot and to love someone in that spot. Like, it's just a hard thing. And it's also part of reality. Like, the odds of someone going through life without ever either being the person or loving someone who's going through something are incredibly low. Like, it's almost inevitable in some ways. And I think that the song is like sad and it's hard, but I was tearing up at moments as we were talking about like, I love you at your darkest, believe in one thing, I won't go away, of like the idea of being loved by someone who's going to look at you and say like, I love you even in your darkest moments, is a really beautiful thing. And I think it's so important that in the song that I do think is a guilt song, she still put that in there of like, at no point in this song is she blaming him. Is she saying, I'm mad at you for this? She's saying, I love you at your darkest, and my number one problem is I can't help you. And that kills me that I can't help you. It hurts me that I can't help you. I don't know. I think she, for her age and where she was in life, she does a lot of very mature things here, mixed in with a lot of kind of immature things, not in a bad way, but just like in the way that teenagers are kind of immature in their life experience.
It's just like innocent, maybe.
Yeah.
Like not as much immature.
Yeah.
I like the note about the empathy because I think so many times like people are so afraid of making a misstep and then living with that regret. Like this song is kind of like the one that it's the living with the regret and the processing side of it. And so you can empathize a little bit more of just like people who really care, like they'll do anything for you. It's like trying to understand that emotion, and it's nice. It's a nice different perspective to take on the song.
Well, thank you all for sharing. This is an emotional one. Go hug a pet. Have some ice cream. Whatever.
If Monty can catch Merlin to hug him with the mood he's in today.
I think he's tired himself out and he's sleeping now.
Yeah, it's about time. Well, that is all we have for you on this particularly gloomy episode of AP Taylor Swift. Join us next week as, I don't know, maybe we make a 180 into something light and fun right here on AP Taylor Swift. That's all we have for you today on AP Taylor Swift. Be sure to rate and review us on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on your social channel of choice at AP Taylor Swift to stay up to date. And join us next time as we overanalyze and deep dive into the next Taylor Swift song on AP Taylor Swift.